Edit audio.
Hi, listeners. Since Season 2 of Ozarks True Crime aired, we've had a lot of people reach out to us. And I first want to thank you for that. We've received a lot of emails, and we've listened to your theories and questions. Some questions led us down more investigative paths, and others we still don't have answers to. But we want to honor the stories you've shared with us, a lot of them being personal stories about the case that we hadn't heard before. And so this episode is bringing forth some of the additional reporting we've done since the finale of Ozarks True Crime, Feeney Family Murders. Shortly after our last episode aired, I received an email from a woman named Brittany. Brittany told me that she was from Springfield and lived across the street from the Feeney family when she was a kid. She emailed us on a whim to present some new information that she hadn't heard in the podcast.
I actually have a best friend from elementary school that sent me your podcast. She was like, you need to listen to this. This is the John Feeney case. She even emailed or texted me a screenshot of your email, and she's like, you need to tell her your story because I haven't told a lot of people.
And she agreed to be interviewed alongside her mother, Robin. And I'll go ahead and direct this at you, Robin. Can you tell me where you lived in 1995?
2028 West Nottingham, Springfield, Missouri. It was across the street, 2 doors away from the Feeney's home.
Robin told us that she would occasionally see Cheryl, walking with Jennifer and Tyler, but that the Feeneys weren't a very social family and didn't really connect much with the neighbors.
They were never friendly. They never spoke to us. I do know John Feeney from junior high school and high school. I went to school with him for a short time in high school. But as far as them being across the street from us, just visiting with them, we never did. That was never anything. We never had a chance to speak with them because if you waved at them, you'd be lucky if they waved back.
Brittany and her sister would play outside with the other neighborhood kids, but she told us that they never played with the Feeney children. Here's Brittany.
I remember there was a couple of times that we saw the kids because Tyler was in, I believe, kindergarten at that time. And I do remember realizing that, they had kids too. And, even though he was 5 or 6, we were all out and about. We had kids joining us from houses, way up the street, but Tyler was right across the street, and it was just weird that he was never out with us.
On the night of Saturday, February 25th, the night that the triple homicide presumably took place, Brittany woke up with a stomachache.
I remember going to my parents' room and knocking on the door and telling them that my stomach wasn't feeling well, and they told me to go get Pepto-Bismol. I specifically remember my dad told me to go do that. And so I went to the kitchen and got the Pepto-Bismol. I put it on a spoon, I drank it, and went to bed.
As Brittany headed back to bed, she happened to look out her window onto the street.
My room faces the front of the neighborhood, so we were able to see all the neighbors across the street from us. Right before I went back to my bed, I looked out my window. I just kind of peeped down, up the road, I guess, should I say. And I saw a car parked outside the driveway, and I thought that was strange. And as I looked, I was like, oh, wait, that's the Feeney's house. And I realized that it was John's red Mustang sitting outside in the driveway. The garage was closed, though. And I thought that was just so weird that his car was parked outside because it was never parked outside.
Most of the houses on their block had attached garages. It was a place where people would store their tools, their gear, and of course their cars.
And it was just out of the ordinary. Their cars were never sitting in the driveway overnight, and that the garage was shut. There was no activity going on that I could see at that point.
The following day was a normal Sunday for 9-year-old Brittany. Her mom left for the airport in the morning. Robin was a real estate agent and was flying to San Diego for a business meeting.
Brittany's father drove me to the airport, and we drove to the east from our house, and the Feeneys lived to the east of us. And that particular day, I said to Bill, they haven't picked up their newspaper. And that was unusual.
The next day, on Monday, February 27th, Cheryl and the 2 children would be found dead in their home. That evening, police went door to door questioning neighbors and collecting statements.
What I vividly remember the most is we were in our garage, just, towards the front end of the garage, we're right by the driveway, and a couple of police officers had approached, my dad and I, to just kind of obviously talk to us a little bit about what was going on, but then also just ask, maybe if anything that we could recall through the evening.
Brittany let her dad speak to the police first, and then pulled him aside to let him know that she saw John Feeney's Mustang in the driveway.
My dad was very adamant to make sure that I wasn't, joking or just trying to say that to get attention. I told him, "No, Dad, I know for sure it was his red Mustang." And he said, "Okay, well, you need to tell the cops." So whenever we, got the cops' attention again, my dad just informed them, like, "Hey, my daughter would like to share, what she saw on Saturday night." So I just told them that I saw his car sitting outside. It was the red Mustang. It was a soft top convertible. And it was just out of the ordinary that that their cars were never sitting in the driveway overnight.
And then, so you spoke with the police, you told them, do you remember how they reacted to you did they seem interested? Were they taking notes? How did they react when you told them this?
I do remember that the police officer did jot that down on his notebook. And I did feel it was kind of dismissed. I felt like being a 9-year-old kid, they probably just didn't pursue that anymore. And because of my age, they just wanted to go ahead and just dismiss the information. They kept it in their notebook, but probably just thought that it was not relevant information.
What stuck out to me during this interview was how much Brittany knew about cars. I mean, she was only 9 years old at the time.
"No, Dad, I know for sure it was his red Mustang. It was a soft top convertible just like his." My dad had a 55 Chevy that was in the garage. I mean, it was a small car. The Mustang back then was smaller.
I asked her about this. Brittany, it seems like you know a lot about cars. Is that?
I love cars. Okay. I love cars, and my son loves cars.
All right. Did you love cars when you were that age?
I think I was the type of kid that I liked sports, but I always watched my dad. He never had a boy, by the way. We were a family of girls, so I was the closest to it. So anytime that he wanted to show me something cool, he would always take me out, and it always had to pertain to cars. So I would listen to what my dad had to say, and I enjoyed listening to what he liked and what he didn't like. And so I do look at cars. I was kind of trained to.
We reached out to Brittany's dad, Bill, to confirm the details of her story. Brittany told me that he was a no-nonsense sort of guy and that he was very busy with work. He didn't want to be interviewed for the podcast. He did, however, email me back immediately when I asked him to estimate the time that Brittany woke up with a stomachache. He said, "The best time range I can remember is 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. Bill also told me this. The officer said they would be back to interview her again, but no one ever followed up, and we did not hear from the police or anyone else about this again." So if Brittany saw John's red Mustang in the driveway between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., it would fit with the timeline that John drove from his teaching conference in Lake of the Ozarks to Springfield and back again. That's about a 3-hour round-trip drive. I asked Rita Sanders about this. You'll remember Rita from past episodes as one of the lead investigators on this case. Rita seemed skeptical, but said that John would have to park in the driveway to manually raise the garage door, and that the time frame would fit. She told me that the initial officers should have written a report, and if they had, she believes there would have been a follow-up. Rita speculated to me. Chances are it was a deputy sheriff, and he may have spoken to the little girl and thought she didn't know what she was talking about and just never wrote a report about it. Or he may have said something to one of the investigators, but since there was no written report, nobody got back with it. She said that she didn't remember hearing anything about it, and as a lead investigator, she had heard all the theories. She followed up with, "That's a shame if that's the case. Big time." Rita also seemed skeptical that a young girl would remember those details after all of these years. Think back to your 9-year-old self. Is this a detail that you would remember? Rita ended the conversation with this. "Man, that's too bad. She may have been the witness that won the case for us. Someone really dropped the ball." I wanted to speak with someone else about this detail. Daryl Moore has been a wealth of information to me. When I sent him an email about this, he told me it was the first time that he'd heard this information, and that no such reports were received to present evidence to the grand jury. He said that he knows lead investigators would have immediately followed up on this information. There were daily status meetings of all law enforcement involved during the initial stages of the investigation, and no one had ever brought this up. Daryl said, "If true, it is very, very unfortunate that it was not followed up on. Depending on the age of the girl at the time and her ability to observe, this could have been the critical piece of evidence needed to convict John." In addition to Brittany, we heard from quite a few more students since airing. They all asked to remain anonymous. One former student reached out to me in regards to John Feeney's inappropriate behavior towards students. They told me that boys got extra credit for bringing in nude posters of women, and he hung these in his classroom closet. A 1996 Glendale grad, who didn't have Feeney as a teacher, emailed to tell me that the kids in Feeney's class talked about how that last day before the conference, he brought in children's books that he had bought for Tyler and Jennifer and insisted on reading them aloud to his high school students. She said to me, it was like he was trying to emphasize that he was a good dad right before everything went down. We heard this story and sentiment from a couple of former students. Another student, who was in John Feeney's advanced chemistry class the year his family was murdered, emailed to tell me that Mr. Feeney was a very charismatic and likable teacher. She said that he was laid back in the classroom. However, something that had not been mentioned is the level of inappropriate things he said and showed the class. She said that he would ask the girls to stay in their seats and call the boys to his computer to show them pictures or videos or something. She said that based on the reaction of the boys, they all assumed he was showing them some kind of inappropriate or even sexual images. We couldn't verify what the images were, but the next story she told us was even more troubling. She told me that at one time, while all of the boys were around the computer, a female friend on the swim team from another class walked in the room. One of the boys pointed to her and said, "Hey, Mr. Feeney, that's the girl wearing the swimsuit in the picture." This student went on to say that they were kids of the 90s, but still can't believe that they never told anyone about the inappropriate images or any rumors of an affair. She said when the police questioned them, she believes that they all defended Mr. Feeney because they still couldn't believe he had done it. In her words, "We liked him as a teacher, had good grades in the class, and he made chemistry fun. But he was also a little creepy." These follow-ups do not paint John in a favorable light, and one even places him at the scene of the crime. Throughout the season, I've not been contacted by anyone in his defense. I've continued to reach out to John many times. I'll continue to do so because I want to know how he'd explain his actions, and I want to hear his story, not just tell it. Our team here at Ozarks True Crime is invested in telling our stories and continuously digging for new information. The research does not end when a season is done, so we want to thank you again for your insight about this case, as well as the helpful information we've received since the Springfield 3 aired. We hear you. Please keep it up as we investigate more stories. Feeney Family Murders is part of the Edit Audio original series Ozarks True Crime. It is written and hosted by me, Anne Roderique-Jones. This episode was produced by Ali Sirwa and Kathleen Speckert and was edited, mixed, and mastered by Ali Sirwa. Our executive producer is Steph Colburn. Thank you immensely to the entire Edit Audio team and Patrick Grindle for the theme music. If you want to get in touch with us, email us at hello@editaud.io.